have a lot to talk about, and we of course, would talk to you about the politics of all of that. But do you want to weigh in on just what's happening on the ground from your observations of what you've seen or just heard in the last few minutes, day 6 of this war?
I think what's most puzzling at this point is what is the point that Hamas had in mind? This was not a spontaneous eruption of violence. This was planned. Obviously, months of training and planning went into this. So the question is, what did they expect to accomplish? There is a worry, and we've heard this repeatedly from people, that they are hoping to bait the Israelis into a destructive urban war. Hamas has never cared about the people of Gaza. They use the people of Gaza, and they might use them now as victims of an Israeli assault. It's hard to tell, again, what they wanted. Mm-hmm. It's hard to see that Israel would want to conduct urban warfare. It's a tremendously costly. Just think of the Marines in Fallujah in Iraq. Yes. How awful that was. So the big unanswered question is, what did Hamas think was going to happen next?
No, it's a very good point. It's a very good point. We've been focused so much on, the Israeli intelligence failures and how this happened, but you bring up the original question of what did they want to happen? It's all happening for our domestic purposes with the backdrop of a presidential race. I want to spend a few minutes talking about that, if we can. Number one, let me start with the current president, and then I want to talk about a little bit of what former President Trump had to say and a column that you wrote about the Republican field. Your thoughts on how President Biden has been handling this crisis so far?
I think he's been handling it very well. I think he's been articulate, which is not always his strength. And I think Secretary Blinken, whose support for Israel is visceral and clear, has been magnificent through all of this.
Former President Trump will likely be, if the polls hold up, his opponent again. Now, and that's the context. That's why I'm going to play the soundbite that we're going to play. There was some strange, for lack of a better word, comments, I believe, last night from the former president. It was critical of Benjamin Netanyahu, and it appeared to be because the Israelis didn't participate the way he wanted in the Soleimani operation years ago. But anyway, here's the former president. Then I want to talk to you about this. Here he is.
I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing. I will say that. And so when I see sometimes the intelligence, you talk about the intelligence, or you talk about some of the things that went wrong over the last week, they've got to straighten it out, because they're fighting potentially a very big force. They're fighting potentially Iran. And when they have people saying the wrong things, everything they say is being digested by these people, because they're vicious and they're smart. And boy, are they vicious, because nobody's ever seen the kind of sight that we've seen.
All right, so that's the leading contender again on the Republican side, George. I mean, the White House has said basically, been critical of all of it, but saying, what you're calling Hamas smart and all the rest. But your thoughts on it?
My first thought is that that's another Trump word salad, and I can't follow the syntax. It's not clear to me at all what he was saying, who did what to whom. Mr. Trump is averse to reading from scripts, and when he's off script, he's chaotic. So I don't know what he was talking about, other than he seems to have managed to talk about this without showing any particular sign of indignation. If there's anything he communicated, it was a kind of admiration, grudging or otherwise, for Hamas and Hezbollah in the north.
Yeah, that is puzzling, I guess, is the best way to put it. As the final point here, though, I brought it up because he is the front runner to be the nominee again, and he's the former president. You had a column about the race to be the nominee on the Republican side, and the headline from that is, Tim Scott, please drop out. Urge others to follow and unite behind Nikki Haley. And the quote is, if Nikki Haley's nomination becomes likely, Democratic panic might produce what Democratic prudence evidently will not. A 2024 ticket other than one joining someone no longer fit for the presidency with someone who never will be fit. So basically you're saying, hey, let's make this a smaller field.
All the Republican aspirants, other than Donald Trump, have essentially the same strategy, which is do well in Iowa, slingshot from there into New Hampshire, or unless you're Chris Christie and you're skipping Iowa, but same thing. come out of New Hampshire strong enough to do well in South Carolina three weeks later. Now, if they all do this, and 4, 5, 6 people continue to divide the anti-Trump vote, that is a recipe for nominating Donald Trump. Since Donald Trump says he will end the war in Ukraine, remember we have 2 large regional wars underway at the same time. He says he'll end it in 24 hours. The only way to do that is to lose it. That is to say, we give up, we're going to cut the ground from under Ukraine. President Xi of China is watching this. And if he sees that the United States doesn't even have the stamina to let other people, to help other people fight and shed their own blood for their own country, he will understand that the United States is really a paper tiger when it comes to Taiwan. This is a recipe for another war, a third war, one in the Taiwan Straits.
Right. That's always been the biggest worry of everybody who watches U.S. foreign policy. George Will, thank you, sir, for your perspective as always. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.